I'm Mark Boyer, and I'd like to talk today about our new website and our new movement we'd like to call Spreading Fairness. And what we're hoping to do is to become part of the civil rights agenda to actually find ways that we protect each, each individual's quality of life and each individual's Bill of Rights, and to do it in a real practical way. And I think several of the simple solutions to some of the dead weight and the unfairness, the inequality, just the flat out institutional bigotry that goes on in our government, from Main Street to Pennsylvania Avenue. We need simple ballot measures. We need so that anybody with a petition and enough signatures can have access to the ballot. It doesn't matter what your political party is, it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter what your agenda is. And if you can get the will of the people behind you, then the prosecutors, the police, the people that do the nuts and bolts and stuff have got to actually follow the will of the people. And one of the cases in point here in Michigan is our medical marijuana and our friend of the court system. Neither one of them have absolutely anything to do with liberty, fairness, justice for all, the things that we as kids were spoon-fed by our schools and by our churches, that hey, America practices fairness and equality, but look around. In every town and in every little burg, village, huge city, look at the people that are being unfair, the people that are just being bigots and are ruining other people's quality of life. It doesn't matter if it's the police chief, if it's the city manager, the village manager. It doesn't matter who these people are, whether they're the department head at the courts, whether they are an enforcement officer, whether they are a superintendent. It doesn't matter who these people are. If they work for the government, there should be a way to simply and efficiently remove them by the ballot box. I think just having the threat of it would absolutely change the structure of our government. Imagine if the very bigoted Deb Hammond, who is my caseworker in Paw Paw, if there was an easy way to remove her, she would have lost her job a long time ago. Or the corrupt bastard that's the police chief of this town. Think about the ways that he could have been removed. Or when he was a sergeant, when he bought the house down the street for $1,600 instead of paying fair market value for it, and then when he didn't get a building permit, when there was a fire, and instead of fixing it or having it insured, instead he had the fire department come and burn it, and there was never a building permit. But yet, at the same time, never a building permit, never followed the same ordinances and the same rules that him and his people went around town enforcing on other people, taking people's houses, condemning houses, doing things. And here he had a house not a quarter mile away, and instead of him being held accountable, the people of the village council, the village manager, absolutely have swept it under the rug. But at the same time, he was going to court and he was testifying in front of the judge saying, hey, a person should be held to account for not getting a building permit. I've got a transcript for the Ninth District Court in Portage, where he testified in a court case against Kylene Kiley, where he said that she should be even subject to going to jail for not getting a building permit. And what's even funnier is that probably 2,000 feet away from that was his house that he purchased for $1,600 at a closed auction. And instead of it being something that was actually offered to the public, well, he had a complete chaos and catastrophe there. And instead of him being held to account the same way that he held other people to account, he was promoted. And instead of him being held to account after this came to a light, he was allowed to lie and bully and absolutely distort what went on and keep his job. Now he's got a cushy job and he's been there for several years. And instead of him being held to account for the things that he's done, that he actually did, not the things that Matt Crawford did, because what Chief West has allowed or has maneuvered and been able to do is to convince the council that was elected 2 years ago that everything that went on in this town was Matt Crawford's fault. Well, one of the things about me is when I was in boot camp in the Navy, they taught us about these things after World War II called the Nuremberg trials, where nobody was allowed that was a Nazi to be able to come in and say, well, I was just following orders. Well, that's exactly what Chief West has done in the village of Vicksburg. And all of his stuff that he's done in the way that he's dealt with the public, the way that the former police chief, the way that they can absolutely disregard the Constitution, whether they give people access to the law, whether they do things with evidence, there's never any way to hold these people to account. Or if there is, I've not found it, because I've went to the state police. Our congressman, the Republican Fred Upton, I called his office after I was in office here in the village of Vicksburg, and I found out how corrupt their budget was, and I watched how people were getting paid for overtime and for vacation time that they didn't earn. And I tried to call the congressman and say, how do I stop this? How do I do this? And instead of getting any help, Fred, his staff lectured me about where Washington, D.C. was. And you know what? All I can think about is this is the Republican Party. They could care less about the little people on the street. They are so aloof and so removed. This guy's lived in Washington, D.C. for 30 years. He probably couldn't even tell you where Vicksburg is, let alone any of the corruption, any of the $1 million that's been squandered here in this town. He knows nothing about it because he doesn't live here. And I'm not talking about throwing out elected people. He's got an election he's got to stand for every 2 years. Hey, that's the way that the Congress works. What I'm talking about is being able to remove the people that are appointed. When we, the people, don't like them, we've got to be able to file a petition, and on the next round, the next election day, these people be put up, and if the general population votes against them, they're out of a job. No union, none of these things to back them up. They've got to be able to be held accountable somehow. And this is the goal. We want equality, fairness, ways to remove bad civil servants. Because what we're hoping for is democracy and transparency, and actually being able to live out the creed of each person being created equal and that nobody is above the law. These are the things that were promised, and in no way is there any help to do this. This is a simple solution, and we've got lots more to come. I'm going to try to make a lot of videos explaining the position, but what we need to be able to do is to vote these people out. And we'll keep posting more videos, and hopefully we'll find ways for you to support, make donations in the name of spreading fairness. Thank you again. I'm Mark Boyer.